Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics first on CBS News Colorado. I'm your political reporter, Sean Boyd. A new poll commissioned by the nonpartisan Colorado Polling Institute finds Colorado's high cost of living has reached a tipping point. 61% of those surveyed by bipartisan pollsters say they have seriously considered moving or have moved due to the high cost of living here. And most, 53%, say they are worse off today than they were 4 years ago, with nearly a third saying they are much worse off. While they are split on whether the state is headed in the right direction, 1 in 4 say it is definitely on the wrong track. And when asked what issues the state should be focused on, most, more than a third, cited pocketbook issues, including housing affordability, taxes, and jobs, while only 3% listed energy and only 2% said guns. Joining me are political analysts, Republican Dick Wadhams and Democrat Mike Dino. So, Mike, let me start with you. Affordability, especially as it relates to housing, is certainly a big issue down at the Capitol. Lots of bills dealing with affordability, but there are also more than a dozen bills this session on oil and gas, just as many on guns, really. So is there a disconnect between state lawmakers and their constituents?
No, there's not. I mean, every legislative session brings a bunch of different bills. By my count, there's almost 30 that deal with housing affordability, land use, rental assistance, even looking at how to deal with property tax. And there's more to come on the property tax that we haven't seen yet. And the bill to ban new drilling in 2030 for oil and gas was killed. So we'll continue to see this. I don't think the disconnect is so much as that there's a lot of diversity of views up there. We have almost 35 days left. The most stressful part of the state legislature is on its way.
There are definitely a diversity of views at the state capitol. So, Dick, while most people say they are worse off than they were 4 years ago, Joe Biden still leads Donald Trump by 10 points in this poll. But most of those who support Biden say they aren't voting so much for him as they're voting against Trump. So how does, this dynamic impact Republicans in other races this November?
The brutal truth is that Donald Trump is a drag on Republicans. He lost to Joe Biden in 2020 by 14 points. He's down by 10 according to this poll, so there's not much difference. It's still double digits. So Republicans are still going to be in a bad position in terms of competitive races going into this cycle, and they will be until Trump is off the stage, because these people just don't like him.
So you have an R behind your name on the ballot.
Right. It's as we saw in 2022, 2020, 2018, going back to 2016. The other thing about the economy, Sean, is that I think the legislature is disconnected from reality. They constantly are debating more regulation of industry. They're not doing anything to promote affordable housing in terms of making the market easier to get into. And so I don't think they have any handle on what to do about this. A bunch of government programs is not going to help. I think they ought to unleash the private sector to be able to build these residences through, and that's what needs to happen.
Yes, certainly no shortage of ideas on what to do with regard to affordable housing. And the poll also asked voters their views on some of the most well-known politicians in the state, including Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Not only do 77% of Democrats and 68% of independents have a strongly unfavorable view of her, so do 36% of Republicans, while 48% of them have a strongly favorable view of her. This past week, Boebert's campaign announced she had been diagnosed with May-Thurner syndrome, a condition that interrupts blood flow, and had undergone surgery to remove a blood clot from her leg and insert a stent. Her campaign manager says she is expected to make a full recovery. So, Dick, no doubt, this has been a tough year for Lauren Boebert. I mean, divorce, family issues, now the health problems. This poll was obviously done before her surgery happened. Do you think her medical diagnosis is going to impact her race for Congressional District 4 at all?
No, I really don't think so. And listening to her and her campaign, I think she's going to have a full recovery. And that's good. I mean, nobody wants to see her in a bad health situation. But her fundamental problems are certainly exposed in this poll. I mean, she's very polarizing. She had to move from a pretty good Republican district to an overwhelmingly Republican district in order to think she could win re-election. And she's got a competitive primary in front of her. There's no guarantee she's going to win this nomination. She's still probably got advantages nobody else has, like money and visibility. But the bottom line is this is going to be a competitive primary.
You know, Mike, Boebert decided against running in the special election to fill retiring Congressman Ken Buck's seat through November. Republican delegates chose former Parker Mayor Greg Lopez this past week as their nominee for that special election out of 8 other candidates, including some who, unlike Lopez, are actually running in the primary, like Boebert, to replace Buck after November. So how does that impact the primary, do you think? You know, having Lopez take this seat through November?
Well, I think if there was a strategy behind it, I thought it was pretty brilliant in the way that you just get a placeholder to fill in, and that person, whoever's on that special election, doesn't affect the primary.
Right.
And so I think that's a plus for Boebert. I think, you know, she did support Greg running as a placeholder, and it really, you know, she has Trump's endorsement, and that's huge for that district. That poll, you know, was a statewide poll, and also in that poll, I think almost 2/3 of the folks asked said this is a blue state now, and so to Dick's point, it doesn't help to have an R behind your name. But in that district, it does. And that's a big plus. She has the R, she has Trump, and she's in a good spot.
Dick, I got to wonder, were you surprised by Lopez winning that nomination? And why? Why did
Well, leading up to that meeting, Sean, there was starting to be a lot of chatter about, well, maybe we should just put a placeholder in. Greg Lopez and a couple of others actually put themselves forward. He was the only one who really showed up that night to do it. And there was a very compelling memo written by Laura Carno, who's a very prominent activist, that was very well written and basically made the case. Let's put a placeholder in so we can have a clean primary fight over here. I think that had an impact. And as you went through the ballots that night, you could see, I mean, because he went from like 5th on the first ballot to winning the darn thing on the 6th ballot.
Right.
So clearly people wanted to do that as they went forward.
Laura Carno did work for Lauren Boebert's campaign when she first ran for office, too.
Well, I don't know that she's involved now. I don't think she is.
She's not. She is not. Coming up next, we'll share where the state wants to spend your money. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. State lawmakers are in the process of approving a budget of nearly $41 billion for the upcoming fiscal year starting in July. The spending plan is an increase of almost 6%, or $2 billion, over the previous budget. It includes a 7%, or $500 million increase in spending for K-12 education. 10%, or $114 million increase for higher ed, 3% pay raise for state employees, 2% increase in the Medicaid provider rate, about $66 million for universal pre-K, $68 million to improve the competency process in the criminal justice system, and $12 million to expand the public defender's office, $15 million to help kids in foster care, and $50 million for a program that provides free breakfast and lunch for students regardless of income. The House also amended the budget to include a $6 million appropriation for senior services. The bill passed the House with only one Republican who sits on the Budget Committee voting for it. So, Mike, biggest takeaway?
Well, the biggest takeaway is what's not in it. And, you know, we had the special session last fall on property tax relief. And we have a commission that has a bunch of recommendations, and evidently those recommendations cost $200 million. And because of the budget forecast and the table refunds, there's not any wiggle room for more money. There's a bunch of bills stuck in appropriations that probably won't get funded, and they're going to have to go look, if they really want to fund more property tax relief, they're going to have to go look for that $200 million. And so to me, that's going to be the biggest challenge they face once the Senate passes it this week, maybe today, is figuring out, all right, what are we going to do for more property tax relief? Because they kind of promised that last fall.
Kind of? You think?
I'm going to say kind of. Dick's going to say, yeah, they did.
They did. So take Representative Matt Soper, a Republican. He noted the budget for healthcare policy and financing amounts to about $10,000 per Medicaid recipient in Colorado. I just think, how is this sustainable?
Well, it might not be. And of course, Medicaid is a joint federal and state program. And it's always, but Medicaid, as I've said before, Medicaid has always been a challenge for every governor and every administration. But I would say this about the property tax issue, though. I'm about ready to write my property tax before next week from Monday. And as are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other Coloradans. This is top of mind on people's list of issues they're concerned about. If this legislature doesn't do something real, I think there's going to be a citizen revolt here. I mean, because it's absurd to just leave this hanging and to say, well, we don't have enough money. We lied to you. We're not going to do anything.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to go over too well.
No, I don't think so.
Speaking of budgets, the city of Denver is trying to reduce its $180 million budget deficit by closing migrant shelters. Mayor Mike Johnston says the city will close 3 of its 4 migrant shelters over the next few weeks, which he says will save the city about $60 million. So, Dick, this still leaves the city with a $120 million shortfall, you know?
You know, it's just, I read these stories, Sean, about tens of millions for this and that in terms of migrants and homeless. I'm thinking, where does this money come from? When did the city of Denver come into all this cash? And at some point, there's going to be a breaking point on that. And the city council appears to be kind of starting to be more confrontational with the mayor. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, certainly questioning where's this math here coming from. You know, Mike, closing all these shelters. So I just, where do these migrants go? Encampments? I mean.
Well, you know, we saw
not as many coming.
We saw one of the officials who work with it tell them, "Hey, this is not maybe the best place for you. It's only going to get worse." It's like the bartender's adage: "You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." And you know, that's a harsh message because I think people, you know, they didn't want to leave Elitch's when they were removed recently. In fact, they have their own mayor within their group now. And you know, they're getting pretty belligerent. I mean, they feel that there's some things they got to stand up for, and so I do think the city is trying to get them relocated to places where they may be more successful in a longer-term life.
Yeah, we'll see. Thanks for joining us for this installment of Left, Right, Center. We'll see you next week.